In this video, we're going to learn how to apply tattoos or artwork that looks like tattoos into someone who has bare skin. And to do this, there's a variety of techniques you can use, but most of it is going to involve some blend modes and some masking. So to get started, the obvious thing you'll need is an image with some skin that has no tattoos already, or use your own skin, one or the other. So if you wanted to say preview a tattoo or some artwork maybe you were thinking about getting as a tattoo, this could be a route you could go. So to kick things off, I'm going to source some files that I downloaded as free stock. They're on a site called Vecteezy, and in the description you should see the links to those if you want to follow along. And or bundled with this video are the files. If you're a pro subscriber, you can dive deeper into this file and play around with it just to see exactly how I ended up with what I did. So here's the before state. I have another file we can open to show you the after state, just to get it looking like we're wanting it in the end. So let me go ahead and find that real quick. It's in our in folder. So with those tattoos applied, you can achieve similar effects to this. Of course, like I said, using some blend modes and some just tweaks to various portions of the skin to make it look a little more realistic than just plopping it on there and skewing it a bit. So we'll actually mess with some mesh tool alignment stuff as well, but we'll get into that as we get there. So just to show you what we can achieve with it, you can go even further and get more tattoos and get, full sleeves going on if you really wanted to, or even around the neck. That's up to you. But this is just to show you the techniques that I would use to go about it. So let's kick things off with this hawk logo that we see on the right here. This isn't normally there, obviously. So let's add that in, and by default it's in this Affinity photo file that I've included. And I'm going to grab this middle one again, and I'll copy it and paste it into this artboard. And off the bat, it doesn't look anything near matching what it should in this photo, so I'm going to start by scaling it down. And we probably want to skew it just a tad. So if you drag your cursor just a little bit above, you can skew it from this point of the axis. So I kind of want to push it in a bit and then shrink it a little bit more, and I think that's okay in terms of the alignment. I'm going to start with some just general layer effects on it. Since this is black, it's a little harder to make this look like it should fit, but we can achieve that kind of with this effect. If we do some sort of gradient here and just an off black here, so black to just a darker gray, and you can adjust the points and everything if you want. I think it's good to go as is at this point. We can adjust the angle even maybe from the top right 45-degree angle. And the key thing I want to add when I add those colors is this noise level. Kind of increase that as you add these colors. Gives it some texture and makes it look a little bit more like the skin, like the pores of a skin, So let's roll with that. I think that looks okay. And next we can do a layer effect on that overlay, or a blend mode, I should say. And I'm going to try, what should we try here? Maybe see what looks good. Add looks okay. I think color burn is what we're going to use in the other colored based tattoos. So let's not use it here because black just doesn't look right. I think add's going to be our best bet here. And then we can even scale back the overall opacity of that layer. Okay. And one thing to make this look a little fresh that I found is if we add an outline to this. So by default, there's no radius. You probably need maybe 2 pixels or so. Let's see. And it's going to be a dark color, but we're going to add that noise again and maybe decrease that color some. Inside shouldn't have any effect. Center should be okay to use, but I think we're going to go with outside roll with that. And if you really wanted to make it look embossed, almost like it's coming off the skin, the key thing here to do is go to the overlay in the blend modes. And that kind of gives it a burnt effect around the edges, almost like it was just done. So that's kind of the effect we're after there. So we got the noise, we kind of skewed it a bit. If you really wanted to make this evolve around the bicep here, you can go as far as using the mesh tool here. You have to have that layer selected. It is going to rasterize this layer, so that's something you might want to take into account. That means it is no longer vector when you're editing it. So this assistant will tell you that if you have that controlled to show. And you can just kind of grab points around these lines and pick and choose where you want this to spread. Be careful here, you can make it go a little too far if you get carried away with it, but just subtle nudges seems to make it look more humanistic as opposed to just a straight up perfect, symmetrical graphic as we used before. So I think this is looking okay. Probably make it a little smaller. I might add the multiply effect there just so it goes through the skin. And if you want to get really humanistic with it, you could maybe brush ever so slightly the edges, just feather them with a layer mask. So I added that here with this icon, and I have a brush selected that's on black, and the hardness is all the way down, opacity is about halfway. And then you could just kind of feather out the very edges of this design, and it kind of gives it that burnt in effect that's, just not fully pigment, but sort of. So something like so. And if you're still having trouble making it blend, I'd recommend doing this technique where you add a new layer over top, get your brush tool, and increase the size a bit. Hold Option or Alt on your PC and click and drag just around the skin just to get some sort of color that's pretty close to what is the most you see in the image. And then we have that color in our palette and our brush. So I've got a new layer. I'm going to brush actually over this image just a touch. Again, my opacity is still at 50% here, so you might have to adjust yours. Okay, so it almost looks like you're, just blotting it away and it's messing it up. But if you come back and just decrease the opacity, or you can do some sort of blend mode here to kind of give it a little more amplified effect so it blends in a little nicer. You can kind of just experiment with which one looks the best. Soft light looks okay. We're just kind of brightening up that point. Okay, so I think we'll roll with that on that arm. The bigger portion to tackle is now on the left arm, which I'm going to start with this old school tattoo is what they're calling it, or gun old school tattoo. So it's already grouped by default in this file. If you want to just grab it and copy it, Command C or Control C, and we'll paste it into this file. I'm going to group the layers before and just call that Hawk. And this one above is going to be, it looks like it grabbed just the stroke. So let's go back and grab the whole thing. There we go. So this one we need definitely smaller. And with the full color tattoos, I'm going to need this to blend into the skin, almost eliminate any of the fills so it goes into the skin and makes it just look like it belongs there. And to do that, let me rename this file real quick. So with this one, we can actually use that color burn blend mode that I was talking about earlier. I'm going to use it, but decrease the opacity some because it's pretty intense, but in a decent enough way to, kind of still give you the aspect of the tattoo here. Already it's just taking shape, but we want it to look like it's revolving around this arm. And I think the best thing to do there is use this mesh tool again. So I'm going to use the tool and just modify these points to kind of contour around the arm. It's going to look more or less messed up, but the idea is to just get it to play nice so you can later brush some of this away and make it look like it belongs there. So I'm going to squish things that need to be and then separate things that don't. So kind of go around like this. You can more or less trial and error with this. I think that will work. Let's I'm going to move this up just a tad. Maybe rotate it a bit. And then we can start to brush away some of this tattoo so it blends into the arm, right? So I'm going to add a mask. And the same technique as before, just kind of using pretty low opacity, maybe a little more in this case, and then have our hardness pretty darn low. And make sure you have a dark color as your paintbrush. Black would be the best option here. And then we'll just basically follow the arm as best as you can, just to contour where this tattoo might come and revolve around that arm. And you actually, I found if you want a more realistic effect, you almost want to brush away part of the tattoo that's on the arm, just so it has that look that it's doing that cylindrical look across the arm once it's fading out of view, if that makes sense. So you'll see I'll just take just a touch away, like just on the line of the arm. It should kind of do its thing there. Almost adds like a highlight on the edge, which is what I'm after. Okay, so let's do this side. And if you need a masking, I'm basically increasing and decreasing my brush size and using the bracket keys on my keyboard to do that. So the right would make it bigger, the left would make it smaller. And then black would ultimately take away from the composition, where white would add it back. So if I were to switch back to white, I could add some of that back. So that's the beauty of those. It's kind of a more manual approach to make things blend in better in an image. I use masking probably the most in any photo editing software. I'm gonna just remove that little portion. Didn't look like we needed it. Okay. So I did notice this image is a little skewed, like the middle of it's kind of bulged when it shouldn't be. So I'm gonna maybe backtrack on some of this and see what I can do. Since we have our mask back in place, we're kind of able to do this. Great, so that's part one of that tattoo. There's one more that's a koi fish with some strokes and bright blue colors and whatnot. You can go ahead and add this one too. And it'll be just below this one on almost the elbow to the forearm section. So let's add that. I copied it from that file. I'm going to paste it into this file. So we have a koi layer here. We need to scale it down dramatically. And I'm actually going to possibly rotate it just so it's a little more symmetrical to this arm. I want the fish to be more the focal point than the water, rather than the water. So we'll already need to brush away some of this tattoo to fit the mold of this guy's arm. Something like that. I'm wondering if this will play nicely though. So maybe we'll go back to this way and keep the waves, as I see here, out of the other one, because we don't want them to clash. It won't look right if they do. Maybe we'll go even smaller here. Something like that could work, I think. Okay, so with this one, we'll do the same approach. We're going to add the color burn and decrease the opacity. Kind of gives it that look like it's supposed to be there. You can toy with layer effects here, or layer adjustments I should say, and increase the brightness or levels. And that can go on each individual tattoo. You can do it on the whole composition, whatever you please. So maybe I'll do that here. Looks like it's not applying to that one. Let's see. There we go. Has to be above it. Okay, something like that. Kind of a bold but still dull look. So it looks like it was actually inked onto the skin. Great. So now at this point we can go ahead and continue the masking. And I'm going to do the same kind of process throughout. When you get around these edges, definitely increase the hardness just so it looks like it hits the edge of the, the arm and just revolves around rather than just fades away, because that look will just not look right. We'll come back and like kiss the edges with just a really light hardness brush just to give it the effect we're after. But initially you want it to almost look like it just stops immediately, just because it actually does based on the line of sight of the tattoo. So you notice here I went a little too far in, so I'm going to come back on this edge and just paint back in what I missed. With a white color, of course. Alright, so let's invert that to black again, and I'm going to decrease the hardness and increase the width of this brush quite a bit, and decrease the opacity. We'll just literally go once around just at the very edge of this tattoo, and it'll just almost look like it takes some of the pigment out but not all of it, which is what we're after. And to give it a little even more realistic effect, you could ever so lightly brush onto some of these areas that look a little too sharp for realisticness. And just brush onto them. Like the strokes in particular look a little too perfect to be a tattoo in some cases, but we can kind of tweak that, just adding some of that skin color back in with this mask going on. So you're essentially just doing a mask on the actual art. Okay, so I think this is shaping up. As you can see here, there's plenty more skin if you want to go ahead and continue adding these. Again, that site I pulled these from, or it was called Vecteezy. It's an open source site for vector art. You can I have credits to the people that I use the art from in the description, so go ahead and check those out. They might have more of the similar art style just so you can keep things consistent in your own tattoos. But if you were considering a tattoo, or maybe thinking of what it would look like on you and you have the art already, maybe this is a way to preview it before committing to. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you have questions or comments, feel free to leave them. I'm curious to see your own results if you're following along, or if you find another image, feel free to post those. Thanks for watching.